Hey everybody, it's Rory from A&S Gear, and we're going to look at a Tippmann gun today. This is the Tippmann 98 Custom Ultra Basic Platinum Series. So there is two different versions of the 98 Custom. There is the Ultra Basic, and there is the ACT. So this is the Ultra Basic. They're both Platinum Series. That's really the only one they do now, which has the split box or the split receiver, so it's easier to work on. Just the ACT has the anti-chop technology built into it. This one does not. So let's take a look at it in the box. We are going to get manual, some foam, spare parts, pull-through squeegee, barrel sleeve, some Allen keys, looks like one O-ring and some oil in there. Barrel, 98 custom threaded barrel. It's about 8.5-inch barrel. There's a slew of barrels that are out there that will fit this gun. So you just want to make sure you have a 98 custom threaded barrel and pick one and put it on there. If you don't like the shorter length or just the look or the performance that you might get of this stock barrel. One feed neck and one gun. Get these out of the way. There. So the gun itself, let's talk about it real quick. Aluminum construction, so durable aluminum construction. The coating they've got on it makes it super rugged. There's a reason that you always see Tippmann guns as rental units typically at fields, because you can just beat the crap out of them and they continue to work. This is no slouch as far as performance. It's not going to go really quick. It's a mechanical gun, so it's only going to fire as fast as you can pull the trigger. But you can easily shoot 7-8 balls a second with that and keep up with most people out there on the field. You're probably not going to walk out onto a tournament speedball field with a 98 Custom. You could. There's nothing wrong with that. So if you do, you probably will get outgunned by people that are just shooting faster than you, but they're not shooting better than you. They're just quicker. And that's, I don't want to call it a drawback. That's just the limitation of the gun. That's probably the only downside to it, though. They're rugged. They hold up, they don't require a lot of maintenance, they're easy to maintain when you do require maintenance, they're efficient, and they are more customizable probably than any of the guns that are out there. The 98 Custom or the other guns in the Tippmann line, you can do amazing things with them to make them look like other stuff. So the gun, the receiver has a split design. So there's actually a split in the receiver here, which lets you take apart one half without having to disassemble the other. So if you need to get to the trigger assembly or the hammer assembly back here, before in the non-platinum versions, you had to take apart the whole thing as one unit. Now you can actually take it apart as a half and get into there and just work on certain pieces. I'll actually have this one slightly disassembled already so we can take it apart and look at it in a minute. The front half right here has a front foregrip. You can hold on to that. It is replaceable with some other things that are made specifically for it. You can't just go buy any foregrip and stick it on there. It does need to be a 98 Custom foregrip, but there are other versions out there as well. And you can also do gas-through versions where you can get a little linkage and you can run a larger ASA on the front here and then run your line into that from the ASA down here. So run it across to here and then up, and then it comes through here and goes into the Power 2 assembly. So those are all possibilities. The feed neck, as you can see, is not on here right now. It's just right here. It's an easily removable and detachable feed neck. You've got two pins at the bottom. The pins just kind of lock into place down here. Kind of wiggle it in, and then we're going to just rotate it up once we get it all the way in. There we go. And it locks into place. The front sight down at the front acts as a release as well as a front sight. So we push the sight down, it releases the feed neck, and we could take it off and clean it if we need to. Push it back up, locks down, front sight clips it in place. So interesting. There are other feed necks. You can get clamping ones. You can get all sorts of different stuff for this as well. Coming along the back side here, I got a screw that fell out. These are part of the screws that I've already taken out of there. On the back side, you can see there's two ports right here. This is kind of a new thing for them on their Platinum Series guns. Rather than having one port that you needed to get a T bracket for, a T banjo fitting that had a hose to come this way and a hose to come this way, you actually connected individual ports now. So if you want to run a response trigger, you would run a port backwards to the response trigger and then install the response trigger in the grip. If you wanted to run the cyclone feed, you'd run off another port and run that forward and connect to that one. By running two different ports, you are not using the same, I want to say volume of air, but the same tube of air to supply both a response trigger and a cyclone feed. It's coming from two different things, so you're not siphoning air from one system or the other. You're running two completely different lines, which actually makes them function better. So that's what these two ports are for, and they just unscrew right out. It makes it very simple to work with. Coming back, you've got a new style sling attachment, so you can hook all sorts of stuff up to it, or remove it completely and put a stock on the back as well. Just make sure it's a 98 custom stock. Grip frame here, like I said, is compatible with both the response trigger and the electronic upgrade. If you do the response trigger, it's just a drop-in part, nothing hard to do. If you do the electronic trigger upgrade, there's a piece you need to knock out, and you do need to trim part of the grips apart so that you can access the button that's on the inside. But again, if you follow the instructions, all of that stuff is marked and shows you where you need to be. It's not like you're just arbitrarily punching things out and cutting things. It's very defined on where it needs to be. Standard screw-in ASA comes right up to the front. Another thing they've changed with their line in used to be that this line threaded directly into the power tube assembly, which made it very difficult to do maintenance because you always had to unscrew it out, and then when you wanted to put it back in, you had to re-Loctite it or re-Teflon it. It just was time consuming and not very, I don't want to say effective, but time effective, I guess would be the right word for it. Now they're using a compression fitting where by twisting it up or screwing it into it, it actually compresses against the power tube and seals properly. So it's easy to take it out and put it back in. You don't need Loctite, you don't need Teflon, you don't need any of those things. It just compresses down and fits and seals up, which is great. Now we're going to take it apart so I can just show you how easy it comes apart. I have all the other screws on here already loosened up. So this one, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are all loose already. And they'll let us remove this back half. Now what I do is, on a brand new gun like this, everything's pretty tight still. And it's not going to want to come apart very easily. So I take a flathead screwdriver and slide it in between the two pieces of the body, and I just kind of pry them up gently. You just want to lift them. You don't want to crank it up or anything like that. That will let it just slowly walk itself up. That way you're not going to have pieces flying out and going all over the place. It is possible to have some of these pieces come dislodged when you take it apart. We want to try to avoid that, if all possible. Things that will come apart when we take our two halves will be our trigger guard, which is easy to put back, our safety, which is easy to put back. You just basically pop it back into place. And then our pins and our springs, and I'll point those out to you in just a second after I set this back into place. Now, you technically don't need to have this piece in there in order to do any work on it, but I don't want to lose any parts, so we'll just leave it there. My pick here. So things that will pop out all the time. This trigger spring right here, it'll jump out. The sear spring over here always wants to come out. And these pins, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the sear pin that's underneath there. If you don't take it apart gently or you have it set up on its side, it's very easy for these to just fall out. So be careful when you're taking it apart. Like I said, don't just rip it apart. That's when they'll come apart. If you do it gently and you do it slowly, you can watch it and you'll know what parts are moving and what's going to come out and what won't. So that gets us to the back here, gives us access to our spring, our drive nail, our back cap, our hammer assembly, just all the parts that we need to on the back side. From this position right here, though, if we just took out 1, 2, I think it's just 2 more, this would come off this way, and we could get into the front where the bolt is, where the front of the power tube is, and then remove this out. So again, disassembly now is quite simple. Wasn't so simple before. Now they've made it nice and easy, where it doesn't require a lot to take them apart anymore. All right, so let's get this back together and get it all buttoned up. So this O-ring inside here, it's supposed to flop around. It doesn't actually sit anywhere. There's no spot for it. There's no recessed area for it. This is loose. I have people ask me all the time, they'll get a brand new gun and they'll see that O-ring through the window back there and they're like, oh, something's broken, something's wrong. That shouldn't be there. That's very normal. That O-ring just flops around in there. It is just a bumper for when the hammer comes back. They don't want it to smash up against the cap in the back, so it just works as a little buffer. That's all. All right, so let's go ahead and put this back together. Let's make sure all my springs and pins and everything are in the right spot. If you've got everything lined up, it should just drop right into place. Simple, simple. All right. Safety is out of position. See my safety, you can see it right there. It's kind of crunched over to the side. We don't want that, because if we put it together like that, then our safety will be squashed and it won't work. So let's kind of pry it up again. Let's get our safety into the right spot. We might need to lift the whole thing out. Like I said, never, I've said this in videos before, never force anything. It should be easy to put together and it should not require you to really push too hard. All right. That's better. So now our safety can move. It's not jammed up or clogged up or anything like that. Sometimes your screws or your nuts will also fall out the back. Let's just make sure you kind of push those back into place. Otherwise the screw won't have anything to grab onto. And then just tighten them all down. It's not very often that the nuts fall out of there though. All right, so we're all back together. Make sure that it actually works. Everything seems good. So the 98 Custom, again, has been a workhorse of the paintball industry forever. You see them at fields for rentals. You see people using them. You see people customizing the crap out of them. So there's something behind them. They work great. They're reliable. It's a great gun for people who like to tinker and a great gun for people who are just getting started. So check them out on the website. The Tippmann 98 Custom Ultra Basic, available through the website. Order yours now through ansgear.com.